Oh, hi everybody, it's Ezra Levant here. I'm not wearing my normal collared shirt. I'm wearing a t-shirt. Normally I don't inflict that view on anyone other than those in my home. And I apologize for doing that today. I have been selected as a plus-sized model to model some of the stuff available on our Rebel News store. And for some reason, these chiseled specimens that you see on the website, sure, that's if you want a medium or a large, but where are my people at? Where's the XXL people? Well, we looked around the office and everyone's too toit. Everyone around here is toit like a toiger. Even David Menzies, I think he's lost about 30 pounds. Is that right, Justin? Something like that, maybe even more. So I'm the only plus size model around, and so I'm modeling, and I'm sorry you have to see this. I'm modeling a shirt. It says Rebel News, COVID 1984, and then the URL, fightthefinds.com. And we got to close it up there before you say, hey, Ezra, you wearing a man's ear? Or are you doing what that, I'm not going to inflict upon you the view of Andrew Cuomo in a t-shirt, because that's just, there's certain things that should never be seen. Or Barney Frank. Can you get me Donald Trump's tweet about Barney Frank? Do you know what I'm talking about? Just if you just type in Barney Frank Trump. Oh, it's a tweet he did, devastating. I feel like Barney Frank. If you just type, they said, Ezra, everyone else is modeling the gear. Why don't you? If Barney Frank can do it. Barney Frank looked disgusting. Nipples protruding in his blue shirt before Congress. Very, very disrespectful. That is a real tweet, people. That is a real tweet. I don't want to be the Barney Frank of Rebel News. And I certainly don't want to disrespect you. But that's the new shirt, COVID 1984. What do you think? 1984, COVID 1984. And it throws to our fightthefinds.com website, which is our little way of fighting back. All right, I'm going to keep my jacket done up, unlike Barney Frank, who was so protruding that the future president just had to remark on his buxom nature. He was a little bit too bosomy, is what Donald Trump said. And you might not like it. You might not like to hear the President of the United States use the word nipples. I don't. But tell me a word that's untrue. Throw that tweet up one more time. You might say, Donald Trump, don't say that. Why do you have to say that? We're all thinking that. Why do you have to say that? Well, because Donald Trump says what all of us think, but are afraid to say out loud. Barney Frank should not have worn that shirt. And if he had to, for some reason, I don't know why that reason was, he should have worn a poncho, like the gown they put around you at the barber shop, that big vinyl thing that they put around your neck, like the reverse lampshade that dogs wear so they don't bite themselves. Barney Frank should have worn that, and I should be doing that too. All right, I'm done talking about myself. Let's talk about serious things now. Everyone's in lockdown across Canada, around the Western world really, and in some parts of the overseas world as well. What's odd are the discrepancies and the anomalies. I mean, Donald Trump had a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma over the weekend, and all CNN could talk about was, oh my God, they're going to be spreading the virus. I didn't hear that counter commentary at all during the Black Lives Matter protests. There are huge exemptions and loopholes for favored classes or just plain old people that the police or the politicians don't want to tackle. Here in the city of Toronto, There are homeless people, as there are in most left-wing big cities, and our friend David Menzies went down there to check it out. Here's homelessness in the time of a pandemic. Take a look at this.
Well, I'm with Miss Suzette. She is a concerned resident here in the Yonge and Isabella area. And as you can see behind me, this is where the parkland has been taken over by, well, I don't know if they're homeless, if they're drug addicts, maybe it's a mixture of both. Miss Suzette, can you please tell me, when did this encampment happen right here in the bosom of downtown Toronto?
I think it started, David, at least 3 months ago when the virus started, or the virus. There's always been people resting here, but not tenting. Suddenly they were tenting. I understand they moved from Moss Park, they moved from 519, and kind of just landed here when they were chased out of 519. So it's been here a long time. Now, it was wonderful. You know, we're our charitable people. We would take them food and clothing and stuff, make them feel, you know, home full in a sense. But it's getting to a point now, David, that crime is rampant. There was a stabbing the other day. They're hurting people. Old people are petrified. One old lady was pushed. Other people are being sworn at. Knives are being shaken at them. And suddenly it's turned into, from what we're seeing, not a very pleasant and safe place to be.
So do you see any tangible solution on the horizon in terms of fixing this problem here?
Offhand right now, nothing. We've sent a letter to the mayor, an email. We've all emailed the mayor and Kristen Wong Tam. Haven't had a response back from her at all yet. Until somebody gets hurt, I don't think nothing's going to happen.
And people have been getting hurt. There's been like at least 3 knifings so far, hasn't there?
Yeah, there has been, yeah. And the police are being tight-lipped about some of it, though. We don't know for sure. We heard the person was killed. They heard he's not killed. So there's no clarity on what's going on.
I figure it's our park as much as theirs, and I should have the right to walk through.
Yes.
They were very to themselves, but to watch the drug abuse is hard.
Have you witnessed that, sir? We've heard there's intravenous drug.
Bigger tent in the middle. There's about 6 of them, and it appears that they're doing drugs. Hard drugs at that, not just marijuana.
And there's been at least 3 reported cases of knifings here, I understand?
Well, at nighttime it's a different environment than day. Oh yes, yes, the creatures come out at night.
Can we not get some security, or the police, that it secures this area so we can all keep going into the park, past the park, not be harassed here, be yelled at? I'm surprised nobody's running around yelling at you right now.
It's interesting because I see police officers right now, 1, 2, 5 of them actually cycling through the park, but they're not enforcing any laws.
Well, I think their hands are somewhat tied. I don't know, what can they do right now? You need more enforcement, you know.
With the lack of sanitation, this is a bona fide health hazard, and yet it's being, there's a blind eye being turned to it, yet we can go along the Queen Street West to the Trinity Bellwoods Park, and if we step outside of our social distancing circle, we'll get an $880 coronavirus ticket. Can you make sense of this city right now?
That's pretty easy, actually. This is cost.
Yeah.
To the city, this is cost. You have to set up homeless projects. You have to give them homes. You have to they can't take care of themselves, as you can see. So you have to have somebody come into those facilities on a daily. How do you work it when most of them can't even stay in the shelters because they can't get along with each other and they're overcrowded? So you have a problem with finances.
I understood there was 124 hotels waiting for people who are homeless. What's going on?
And that you raise another great point, Mrs. That we live in a country now where we are taking in, or at least until the pandemic kicked in.
You know what? That goes on, that video. Outstanding coverage from David Menzies. Would you agree with me? I was poking fun at David for losing the weight that I have found. He lost the weight. Guess what, guys? I found it. Would you agree with me that David Menzies has done absolutely some of the best journalism in the entire country during the pandemic, going to the airport 10 times to document the flights coming in from China, no screening, no masks, no thermometers, doing the Fight to Find Civil Liberties beat. Cian Bexty and Sheila Gunn-Reid have done some of that also, but David's done the main of it, especially here in Ontario. going out to the parks, the insane fences being put around parks and the social distancing circles. And now we've got a video coming out today from David where he has fisticuffs. Not him, he's not throwing hands, but Antifa gets pretty rough with him. Can we give people a sneak peek at that? We have to make one final edit to it, but I saw the work in progress. I'd like to show just a little bit of that. David went out to Kingston, Ontario, where they didn't have the audacity to pull down a statue of John A. Macdonald. They were going to throw eggs at it, which is sort of lame, but I suppose very Canadian. Just like in that clip we saw there, both the Chaz or Chot or Chug or whatever the Seattle Autonomous Zone is, looks like we got a mini version of that in Toronto, and we have people upset about that, just like they're upset in America. But in all ways, it's sort of more muted and you know, a lower degree in every way in Canada. But we have some of the same pathologies in America. Same thing, we haven't had statues torn down in Canada yet that I know of, other than the City Council in Victoria, which tore down its statue of John A. Macdonald. So here's a clip. Do we have it? Yeah. It's probably on the Slack page, or if that's not it, or yeah. Yeah, okay, perfect. Here we go. Let's take a look.
News, where I think most reasonable people draw the line, is when your speech becomes physical violence, as we endured. It's something I think that we on the right understand, but apparently for those on the left, violence is being normalized in order to shut down dissenting opinions. And you know, it's kind of funny, one of the signs you see in vogue at these kind of protests these days is silence is violence. And yet, by merely asking questions, you incur real violence from these protesters, because the silence they're interested in breaking is for you to become a parrot to what they're preaching. There is only one narrative in their worldview. There is no room for a dissenting opinion. In any event, we filed charges. If they can track down any of these thugs.
So we'll have that whole video. As you can see, we had a security guard there. The guy who actually was walking with David like that was professional security, and he did a good job. Obviously, they were outnumbered 10, 20 to 1, 2, including our cameraman. So the security guard wisely sort of retreated with David. David's instinct was to stay and fight. But as David said to me just this morning, had he followed his instincts rather than the security guards, there's no doubt, David told me, that not only would he have been actually beaten, but absolutely, he said, his camera gear would have been seized, stolen, smashed, whatever. So we're going to beef up our security protocols. I knew that there was a chance of this, so we sent a professional security guard with them. Obviously, we need to send 2, 3, 4. No other media company in Canada has to send security. If CBC were to show up, they would all put on a song and dance. They would put, the propaganda outlets here, let's put on a really good show. Why would Antifa attack their house organ? Why would they attack their own propaganda? So CBC never needs to have security. Globe Mail, Toronto Star, they never need security. No one on the thug left would try and stop them. Why would they? It's only David Menzies and Rebel News they try and shut down. So that was David doing great reporting. I see a super chat came in. Is it just the one? Johnny McLean, $10. Did you hear about the Nova Scotia shooter, Gabriel Wortman, receiving $475,000 from the RCMP before going on a shooting spree? Is he an agent? I heard of that report in Maclean's magazine over the weekend. And if that's true, that would certainly explain a lot of the strangeness in the whole case. Why did he have a police car and police accoutrement? Why were the police so strange about warning people? Why did they not warn people properly? There were so many weirdnesses there. And if it turns out and that's a huge amount of money, isn't it? That's a staggering amount of money. Wortman was The Nova Scotia shooter case has hallmarks of an undercover operation. Very serious article. He had so many weird interactions with the police that we know about in his life. He was a denturist, I think was his profession. He had an office. Can you Google Porta Peak denturist? Because he had one of those sort of goofy and quirky signs outside his office. There was a huge teeth, I think, or a huge tooth, or a huge smiley teeth or something. And I thought, but I heard he was very well to do. I thought, geez, is there that much money in making false teeth in Porta Peak, a small town? I guess not, but if the RCMP are paying you close to $500,000, and I don't know if that's even taxable. Yeah, look at that. Dentures. Like, that's a funny story. You drive by that store, that's sort of funny, right? Apparently he was a wealthy man, very wealthy man. You gonna get wealthy making dentures? Maybe. Maybe it's like being a dentist, but maybe you just print money. But sounds to me like that the cops were his source. Very weird story. Perlman 35, $5. Did you hear about Watson Monument in St. Catharines, Ontario? A motion for removal is being tabled tonight by Radical City Councillor. I know I didn't, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. Watson Monument, and I'm curious which Watson that is in St. Catharines. Private Alexander Watson. And would you forgive me that I don't know who Alexander Watson is? I'm looking right now at the veterans.gc.ca. They have a picture of it. That's quite a, quite a stately statue. Was erected by the people of St. Catharines in 1886 to the memory of Private Alexander Watson, who fell in battle during the Riel Rebellion. So obviously, the people who want it torn down, I can extrapolate from that the fact that he fought against the Riel Rebellion means he's persona non grata and must be erased from history as a kind of Canadian version of the Confederacy. So yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't even think it's much of a limb. I think they will absolutely vote to take that down. Of course they will. Of course they will. Here's a guy who it looks like he voted to take himself down, or I don't know. You look at this. Let me play a little bit of Ben Mulroney's video. You know Ben Mulroney, right? He's the son of the former Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney, and he was married to fashion diva Jessica Mulroney, who got into a spat with another Instagram influencer who was black. Well, that's a mistake in this era, because no matter what your grievance is, if it can be colored or described as an anti-black grievance, well, you're out. Even if it's just a quarrel between two divas. These days, we live in dangerous days. People are being fired, not just for saying the wrong thing, but for not saying the official thing emphatically enough. It's like the old Soviet tactic of someone making notes of who stops applauding the boss first. Okay, so the dictator just spoke. Now I'm watching you guys. Who stops applauding first? Who stops clapping first? That's the kind of thing going on. Here's Ben Mulroney. I don't quite understand this. Let's watch it together and then let's talk about it.
I want to take a moment to speak to you about the situation surrounding my wife, Jessica, and the next steps I will be taking with Bell Media. I love my wife. However, it is not my place to speak for her. And today, together, we are committed to doing the work to both learn and understand more about anti-black racism, as well as learn and understand more about our blind spots. So what does this mean for me? Well, it means acknowledging here today that my privilege has benefited me greatly. And while I have certainly worked hard to build my career, I know that systemic racism and injustice helps people like me and harms those who aren't like me, often in ways that are invisible to us. This needs to change. Last Saturday, I watched on CTV as my colleagues led a national conversation about how we can take action against systemic racism. And that conversation showed me more than ever, we need more Black voices, more Indigenous voices, more people of color in the media, as well as every other profession. And that is why I have decided to immediately step away from my role as anchor at eTalk to create space for a new perspective and a new voice. It is my hope that that new anchor is Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, and they can use this important platform to inspire, to lead, and to make change. I am so proud of everyone involved with eTalk and indeed CTV, and I know they will continue to demonstrate the excellence that has made that show and this network #1. And while I am no longer anchoring eTalk, I will continue to contribute to the show, hosting red carpets and taking on other special projects here at Bell Media. Of course, I look forward to bringing you the news every day here at Your Morning alongside my amazing colleagues, Anne-Marie, Lindsay, and Kelsey. So that's the plan. Thank you for your words of kindness, your support, and most importantly, holding us all, including me, accountable.
I thought that was very strange. I got no beef with Ben Mulroney. I think he has worked very hard for what he does. I think what he does is fairly light. It's entertainment, and good for him. I mean, that's what normal people watch. Normal people don't watch political YouTubes. And he's handsome, he sounds good, he's got a very good demeanor. Some of that he inherited from his father, and his good looks from his mother, and his patter from his dad. So there's no doubt that he works hard. There's also no doubt that he got his start, at least, because he's the son of Brian Mulroney. That, I suppose, is a kind of privilege, but I wouldn't call it white privilege. He's the son of a prime minister. That's the privilege. It would be like if one of Barack Obama's daughters got their start. It's not Black privilege, it's daughter of Barack Obama privilege. I honestly have watched a grand total of 10 minutes of Ben Mulroney in the last 20 years. He used to host Canadian Idol, if I recall, and I watched a bit of that. I don't think he's ever said a racist thing in his life. If you're covering entertainment, Hollywood, showbiz, and music, you're probably oversampling Black voices just because of the strong presence of Black talent in sports, movies, music. No one calls for affirmative action for Black people in those occupations because they're so strongly represented. In fact, I think it surprised some people to learn that the Black population in the United States is 12%, because of course there's many fields where Black music, Black sports is much, the NBA, the NFL. So I don't think anyone who works in those industries for the last 20 years as successfully and at a high level as Ben has, I don't think he's got a racist bone in his body. I wouldn't have thought so anyways. I don't think he's said a word in 20 years wrong. Does he have other quirks like his wife Shirley does based on just being a fancy pants? Sure, absolutely. And I think that's what got her in trouble with a Black influencer. It wasn't a racist thing. It was just she was trying to put a heavy move on a rival, threatening her. It wasn't a racial threat. So I think Ben Mulroney's comments here are weird. It's an apology for having done nothing wrong. Ben, we knew you were a Mulroney when you introduced yourself 20 years ago. So you're not apologizing for things. You're not taking a second look at things. You're not, fixing problems. You don't have a problem. Your privilege, if you had any that got you in the door, was being born to your dad. It wasn't a race thing. And stepping away from one of your many roles at CTV doesn't ameliorate anything. I mean, maybe you'd take a break. I don't know. I don't know if this was a firing or a quitting or how it goes. Maybe it's a family decision by Ben and his wife to try and look proactive. I mean, she was utterly trashed in the media, and from the gossip pages, it looks like even Meghan Markle dropped her. Well, fancy that. Meghan Markle being a gold digger, upwardly mobile person who forgets people in tough times. I'm shocked to hear it. You'll remember that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry came to Canada expecting us to pay their security. Oh, we really love Canada. It's part of the British Commonwealth. They left in about a couple of weeks when they saw a better opportunity in LA. You know, it's like people at a party who are talking to you, but they're always sort of looking around for someone more interesting. That's Meghan Markle. So yeah, she dumped Jessica Mulroney too. I think this move is probably a crafted strategy by Ben Mulroney to sort of salvage the family's wokeness by making a generous act for a person of color to take over the role. Look, in a way I really don't care, other than it's part of the mania that's gripping us. Let me say again what I said in my extended video essay on this subject a few weeks ago. Canada never had slavery. In 1793, by the way, Canada was founded, Confederation was 1867. In 1793, when Canada was a tiny fraction of what it is, in fact, Upper Canada is what they called part of it. The West was still wild. I don't know the total population Canada in 1793. I'm curious. Was it even 250,000? I'm going to tell you the answer because I've got it right here. The population of Canada, you're not going to believe this, in 1790 was 191,000. Can I email you that? I mean, that's how small Canada was. So it was a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what it is now. And you know how many black people were living in Toronto, according to the census? 16. 16 black people. Is that two families? Is that three families? But in 1793, in Upper Canada, now Lower Canada, there were Aboriginal slaves too. 1793, John Simcoe, the lieutenant, can you find the 1791 census there, or 1780? Yeah, 1784. You see that census there? Yeah, right there. Look at that. So that's population of Canada. Yeah, go back to the number there. And just highlight it or zoom in there. So that's how small Canada was. And you can see there's different things being measured. 1790. Oh, click on numeral 28. What's 28? Population of Canada and Nova Scotia. All right. So there's different things that were measured. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to show you how small Canada was. And there were 16 black people in Toronto, 16. 1793, Upper Canada abolished the slave trade. And then over the course of the next 40 years, the British Empire, of which Canada was a part, here it is right here. This is the abolition of the slave trade in 1793. It's an amazing document. Not only did it abolish the slave trade, it said all slaves who were young must be freed when they hit 25, and the slave master must take care of them until then. This was a temporary measure until slavery itself was abolished in the British Empire, and every single slave was redeemed with a payment by the British government. In fact, it was a loan so large that it was actually not paid off till the year 2015. So I don't know what Ben Mulroney is atoning for. Can you get me that? I think we showed it last time. I think we showed it on Friday. The protest outside the police chiefs. I used it in my monologue tonight, I think, don't I? So here was a protest. I don't think they called it Black Lives Matter. It was some other black thing. I've looked at this video a couple times. I think I showed it to you on Friday. I think every face in this video is white. Now, it's a little bit hard to see. Yeah, so white, 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 white. I don't know who that is banging the drum. Pretty white. There's a couple masks, so I can't see. Do you see any black people there? He looks Asian, I think, or maybe not. Pink hair, green hair. Would you agree with me that's pretty well? What's the caption on that? I can't remember the exact. That was outside the police department, wasn't it? Abolish the police, Juneteenth. Juneteenth is an American thing. Let me get back to Juneteenth sit-in, organized by Not Another Black Life. It's happening now outside Toronto Police Headquarters. So you know what Juneteenth is, do you? I don't think you do, because Juneteenth is not a Canadian thing, and Juneteenth is not generally been covered by American media. I know what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth is a sort of holiday commemorating the freeing of American slaves. Okay, so why are we talking about, so Juneteenth, we abolished slavery in 1793. And then over the next 40 years, we literally banned it, sent the Royal Navy after it, redeemed every slave with a cash payment, and basically had a 50-year war against slave boats. The West Africa Squadron of the Royal Navy intercepted 1,600 slave ships, freeing 150,000 slaves and dissuading however millions more. It's true Abe Lincoln freed 4 million slaves as a byproduct of the Civil War. Moses, I don't know how many Jews he led through the desert. Maybe it was in that same number too. But I think that it's fair to say that the British Empire, of which Canada was a part, freed more slaves than, with the exception of Lincoln and Moses. And I don't know, maybe there was another slave freer, maybe King Cyrus of Persia. So why are you talking about Juneteenth? That's not a Canadian thing, that's an American thing. And white, hey, I got no problem, I'm white myself. But you know who was in the office they were banging drums outside? A black man. The chief of police in Toronto is black. Are you with me here? See, you've got 100 woke leftists protesting against a black man. Who's the racist now? And you say you're doing this because of Juneteenth? You don't even know what Juneteenth is. It's not a Canadian thing. We abolished the slave trade in 1793. That's the chief, Mark Saunders. So you got a bunch of woke white liberals, they're not even liberal, they're not, I shouldn't say they're leftists, trying to drive this working class black man out of his office. Yeah, you're racist. This is crazy. All right. We got some super chats. Let me, we don't have any, but let me mention, let me do, you know what, I haven't even mentioned super, what's a super chat? Sheila and David are so much better at this than me. A super chat is what YouTube calls it when you make a comment in the right-hand section there of the video, and you chip in a few dollars to make that comment in a bright color. And so not only do I see it out of the corner of my eye, or Justin sees it and he grabs it and sends it to me later, but everyone else sees it, and it stays at the, and it also is put at the top of the little chat window there for a period of time commensurate with the size of the gift. So the other night, we had an election, a Conservative Party of Canada debate watch show, and I've never seen a gift this large. I think David Anderson was the fellow who put it in, I think. $300. Unbelievable. So that obviously stayed up for the entire time. The reason that's great is because we get 70% of those revenues. So YouTube takes a huge commission, but we get the rest of it, so it's an important source of revenue for us. Yeah, look at that. Unbelievable. Some of the generous gifts, you can see that $300. That's what it looks like. So those really bright boxes up there, and the comments itself are put in highlighted color. That was a really fun night. See, Sheila and Kian look great in their t-shirts because they're not plus-sized models. Okay, 12:34. Let's get back on track. So yeah, feel free to make a super chat, and I'll read your chat out loud. I want to show you one more Black Lives Matter thing, and I say again, it's not an American issue. Just like Occupy Wall Street, don't bail out the banks. We didn't do that in Canada, guys, because thankfully none of our banks failed in the 2008-2009 financial crisis. We didn't have a meltdown on Wall Street that was then bailed out by taxpayers. We just didn't. So I can understand the sentiment behind Occupy Wall Street, but Wall Street is a street. It's an actual street in Manhattan, and it's a street where traditionally the banks and the investment companies are. Why are you up here in Canada? So they called it Occupy Toronto or whatever, but it just didn't ring. It just didn't ring true, because there was the banks were not bailed out. Stop the bailout of the 1%. Yeah, they didn't get the bailout. So it just doesn't make sense. Black Lives Matter. Yeah, here in Canada, we abolished slavery when there were 16 black people in all of Toronto, when all of Canada had less than 200,000 people. So this is, when Canada was 99.5% smaller than it is, we ended the slave trade. There were 16 black people in Toronto. I don't even think they were all slaves. I don't know, maybe they were all slaves. By the way, I come from Alberta, where there were a lot of black cowboys. And they left the United States to get away from either slavery or they just wanted a new start. There were a lot of American black cowboys in Alberta. Absolutely true. I think we got ourselves a super chat. Dragon Joe, $10. I'm proud of my family history. If you ask me to do reparations, you can do something to yourself. You can go do something to yourself. Even in South Africa during apartheid, my family worked for people, both black and white. Yeah, I mean, where does it end? The Jews were kicked out of the kingdom of Israel and exiled. The Moors invaded Spain, kicked the Christians out, then the conquistadors kicked, then the Spanish kicked the Moors out. Who has to pay reparations to whom? It's just endless. How about people who have been totally vanquished? I mean, this goes on today, for example. China conquered Tibet, is occupying it, and is pouring in millions of Han Chinese people, it's an ethnicity, to dilute the Tibetan ethnicity there. Do they get, I mean, it's absolutely endless. And, there's a guy I follow on Twitter, he makes me laugh. His name is Jesse Kelly. I met him for the first time in Washington at CPAC this year. He's like 7 feet tall. He stands out. He's got a great sense of humor. And he does video shorts. I haven't seen them in a while. But he got this thing going, and I think it became the #1 trend in the United States on Twitter, called Cancel Yale, as in the fancy pants Ivy League university, Yale University, which is named after Elihu Yale, a slave trader. So this is Jesse Kelly. He had like 100 tweets, pictured how the founder of Yale made his fortune, and that's a slave ship. Just click on Jesse Kelly and just scroll, because he's got so many of these. Let's just pick a fun one. Elihu Yale, for which Yale University is named, was a slave trader. Clearly we must cancel Yale. The mob says so. While we're at it, let's get rid of the elitist, leftist, globalist Yale altogether. So he's explaining himself now, but when he really got this thing going, he wasn't explaining it. And there's Ann Coulter right about there. Yale naming competition continued, or how about selling off naming right to replace Yale's current namesake, a slave trader, as sports stadiums do, e.g. Sony Entertainment Corporation, University. Ann is funny. Okay, scroll down. See, now they're explaining their shtick, but throughout the weekend, FYI, I'm not stopping. Anyone displaying a Yale logo in any form is championing the name of a man responsible for this genocide of black people. Do Black Lives Not Matter? Seize Yale's endowment and redistribute it as reparations. And I'll read one more. FYI, I'm not stopping until justice is done. Rice University has until next week to remove this statue of its racist founder, William M. Rice, from its campus, or we will march on Rice. Rice believed that schools should be for whites only, not in my America. So he's going on, and what he's doing, it's obviously clever, is if the new rule is anyone in a previous time who had any ideas that are not woke and progressive by 2020 standards, and by the way, that includes things that were considered normal 10 years ago. The whole transgenderism thing was not even a thing 10 years ago. We didn't even have the word. You had the word transvestite. There was the odd movie like Mrs. Doubtfire or Tootsie. But this whole mania and gender conversion, and it's 10 years old. So you don't even have to go back hundreds of years to Elihu Yale. You can go back 10 years. Go back 10 years to when Barack Obama was against gay marriage. Forget about trans. So if you can take down Christopher Columbus, and if you can take down Winston Churchill, why can't you take down Elihu Yale, who actually was a slave trader? And you know what? I didn't know what New York was named after. This is how dumb I am. I thought New York was just York, New York, just like New England. I thought it was just named after the city. It's not. It was named after the Duke of York, who was the head of the Royal Africa Corps, a slave trading company. New York itself, it's not named after York. I thought it was. It's named after a slave trading man. I see they want to take down George Washington because he had some slaves. Well, there are more things named after Washington in the United States than any other president, obviously. Unbelievably, they took down statue of Ulysses S. Grant, the Union soldier who beat the Confederacy. Take down Abraham Lincoln himself. So it's like when we played that terrible clip of Howard Stern using the N-word last week. That would be an immediate cancellation, deplatforming for anyone else. But Howard Stern is a billion-dollar asset. I mean, I don't know what he gets paid every year. Does he get paid $100 million a year, or is it $10 million a year, 50 a year? It's a huge number. I think he's probably the highest paid guy in all of talk radio, with the possible exception of Rush Limbaugh. Let's say he's making $50 million a year. So he's got to be making more than that for Sirius XM. So if he's worth $100 million a year, do your, present value of the flow of that. If, he is worth $1 billion. Do you think Sirius XM Radio is going to fire him because of blackface? It's a tough question, isn't it? Yale. There is no denying it. Yale, Y-A-L-E, the name, the word, is the name of a leading slave trader. It just is. It just is. So if the left wants to topple all of history, erase history, topple statues, smash things like the Taliban famously does, are they going to go after their billion-dollar brands? And that's really what Ann Coulter and Jesse Kelly were getting at. You know how many people have Yale-branded clothing or Harvard-branded clothing? And I don't even mean like sportsy stuff. I mean just Yale, yeah. Not even people who went to Yale, of course. It's a brand. It says I'm smart, I'm cool, I'm preppy, I'm high class, I'm in a high circle, I'm smart. It says all these things. That is a brand. What's their endowment? It's got to be in the billions. Okay, so does that mean you can be named after a slave trader if you're super rich? You can use the N-word and do blackface like Howard Stern did if you're super rich? So it's a bit of a shtick that Jesse Kelly, Ann Coulter had a funny tweet, Justin, I won't make you look for it, but she said if we're renaming Yale, why not, and Yale talks about having a community connection, why not call it the New Haven Community College? Because of course every snob out there who went to Yale, obviously good people, I have friends who went to Yale, a lot of really good people went to Yale, and they love saying they went to Yale. Do you think they want to give up their parchment that says Yale? Yeah, look at that. Another new name for Yale. New Haven Community. I went to a community college. Like right now you say, I went to Harvard. I went to Yale. I went to Princeton. I went to Stanford. Well, I went to Oxford. Well, yeah, now guess what? Stanford also, like so many of these universities named for someone who was doing something that by today's woke standards is not cool. Lots of super chats. Let me get cracking on those. Thank you for the super chats, everybody. Pearlman 35. Oh, I read that one already. Pink Phoenix Nails, $1.49. Well, thank you very much. And if you have a comment, feel free to type it and I'll do my best to read it. Camila Zapolsky, $10. Proud to be a paid subscriber to Rebel News. Greetings from North Carolina. Well, isn't that friendly? Thank you very much. I like North Carolina. You know, sometimes we trek on down in the family mobile and we try and sing a song for every state we go through. My favorite is Country Roads when we go through West Virginia, but there's a lot of great Carolina songs. Kane Enmark, $5. When is Justin Trudeau going to kneel to the next evil General Zod? Yeah, exactly. Dentor 59, $5. If painting Trudeau's statue is a hate crime, then all of Western Canada will be arrested. That's right. You know what? There was this, I don't know if it was a prank or trying to, like a double or triple clever prank, but someone painted Pierre Trudeau's face black. And they're calling it a hate crime. Hate against who? Hate against black people? Hate against white people? Hate against Trudeau? Like, who's the hate against? Or is it just mocking Justin Trudeau? So how is it a hate crime to what someone did to the statue, but not what Justin Trudeau himself did, as you saw in that clip there? Chris Marchese, if I'm saying that right, love your show, keep up the good work. Seems you can't fix stupid these days. Canada's all about equality and giving everyone an equal opportunity. Well, that's what I think. Some people want an equality of result, and other people, they're not even interested in that. They just want to smash. They want to tear things down, whether it's a statue or some powerful person. Chad Stocking, $35. Keep up the great work. Well, Chad, that's very generous of you. Thank you very much. We'll do our best. The Brzezinski, $5. You're wrong, Ezra. Finance Minister Jim Flaherty gave the bank $75 billion bailout, and he also wrote into law a bail-in for future use. I take your point, and you're correct on the bail-in, which I've studied at some length. Was it a bailout or was it just increased liquidity? Because maybe that's the same thing. No banks failed by the standard definition, but I accept your correction. I guess I was thinking of all the banks that actually shut down, closed up, were not saved in America. So you're making me more precise in my language. Thank you. Dragon Joe, $2. Kingdom of Zod by Billy Talent is a great song. You know, I like Fallen Leaves on the Ground. There's some crazy videos. I like Billy Talent. He's a bit of a shouter. I don't know Kingdom of Zod, but I'll check it out. Thank you for that tip. I think I've gone through all the super chats. Okay, it's 12:48. Can I shift gears? We're going to end on a dog video, as we like to do. And Justin always chooses that. But hey, you know what I'm thinking of doing? And I've been talking to the team about it. You know, we used to do a lot of Rebel events before the cough was ubiquitous. In fact, we had a trip to Israel planned last month. And we had a cruise to Alaska planned next month. And we had a huge event in Regina, Saskatchewan. Go to reginaspeech.com, Justin, if you please. We have the huge speech at the Connexus Arts Center. More than 1,600 tickets we had sold to hear our friend Dr. Patrick Moore. That was scheduled to happen. Now it's rescheduled for September 16th. Ticket prices start at $25, go up to $2,000. Scroll down a little bit. Patrick Moore, world's most sought after thinkers on sustainable energy, blah, blah, blah. So we had a great event Now it's rescheduled to September 16th. We had all these events. Do you see what I'm saying? We had conferences and cruises and trips and speeches, and it was just all shut down because of the China virus. And that, I'll get to China virus in a second. Don't you forget about that. I feel like the world is slowly emerging from the lockdown, some parts faster than others. I think that Canadians are too passive and submissive. The Brits are worse. The Brits are worse. I follow Peter Hitchens on Twitter, and what he shows is just so pathetic. But things will slowly open up, and I want to do a ton of things. I want to do events across Canada, and I want to do trips again. I want to do that cruise again. I know not everyone will want to go on a cruise ship after the pandemic, but I tell you, for those who do, prices will be low. Am I right? I want to do a trip to Israel again. There's another secret trip I'll tell you about later, but another trip I was thinking of doing is to Taiwan. What do you think of that? And when I say a Taiwan trip, I don't mean just a tourist trip. I mean a political trip, like a fact-finding mission, like we've done to Israel. When we went to Israel last time, we brought a bunch of Rebel viewers with us. Obviously, we charged a ticket price. And we would meet this expert and that general and this politician and see this site. One of the highlights for me was we were part of the Israel Air Force graduation. We were allowed into the audience, the only people who weren't family. It was amazing. So we really got to see Israel as tourists, but as newsy people. It was great. I would like to do that in Taiwan. I've been to Taiwan to visit with their political leaders. That was almost 20 years ago. I'd like to go now, bring my Rebel team, and bring you. So we would fly to Taiwan, spend a week visiting, learning about defenses, learning about the economy, learning about their health approach, just learning about this great little Chinese democracy less than 100 miles away from the People's Republic of China. What do you think of that? I think that sounds amazing. And I like Taiwan. My memories of going there over a dozen years ago are not sharp, but they're all positive. So stand by for that. Obviously, Taiwan's in a tight lockdown. It's one of the reasons why they haven't even had 10 fatalities. Let me show you my shirt one more time. Plus size model here. Look at that. COVID 1984. I shouldn't wear t-shirts. I'm a little bit too much like Barney Frank. Hey guys, I teased a book cover to you a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you were watching. Oh, I see a super chat. I see some super chats there. Hard money, $20, goal. That's a fun one. Thank you very much for that. I wrote a book. That's the book. Can you zoom in a bit? China Virus. How Justin Trudeau's pro-communist ideology is putting Canadians in danger. What do you think of that? Trudeau, the virus that looks like the Chinese flag, China virus. Can you go to the Amazon page and see if you can find it? So we have published 14 books, 7 books, ebook and a regular paperback version, so that's 14 titles. We published 14 titles with Amazon in the past 5 years. We're very prolific publishers. And most of them have gone to #1 on the bestseller list. I don't know if you know that. Sheila Gunn Reid, all 3 of her books have gone to #1. I did Trumping Trudeau. I did The Libranos. I think both hit #1. Trying to think the other books we did. Anyways, so we go to upload this as normal. I mean, I'm a best-selling author. And, we've done this many times before. We know what we're doing now. And they reject it. Okay, we try it again. Maybe we checked some of the wrong boxes. Like they say what category is in. So we checked politics and health or something. So they said nope. So then we tried it again. They said nope. So we appealed. They said nope. So then we had our lawyers write a letter saying, what's going on, guys? They said it's because they don't publish books on the pandemic because they're worried about misinformation and conspiracy theories and quack remedies. Oh, okay. Well, that's not what this is. This is a political book. I don't say, hey, you can avoid getting the Rona if you have onions around the house or something. Like, I don't get into that. I don't even really get into where the virus came from. I just don't. I talk about the politics. They refuse to. So for 2 weeks, we were sort of quietly trying to figure out what to do. And then finally, they relented. We looked like we were going to have some big fight with Amazon, but they finally relented. And let's go to the page on the Amazon there. There is a typo in the headline. We'll fix it. So it's now available for pre-order. Can you click on the blurb? And I will read the blurb. Maybe zoom in if you can. Why did Justin Trudeau wait so long to restrict flights from China? Why did this top health bureaucrat tell us not to wear face masks? Why is there a loophole in Canada's quarantine laws for illegal border crosses at Roxham Road? Why did the Liberals gather up Canada's medical equipment and ship it to China as a gift? And why on earth did Trudeau give $838,000 to the Wuhan Virology Institute? None of these strange facts make sense until you understand that the true virus threatening our country is Trudeau's lifelong infatuation with the Communist Party of China, the country whose basic dictatorship Trudeau admires. China virus documents the comedy of errors that allow the coronavirus to spread through our communities, but it also reports in meticulous detail the Trudeau family's obsession with China that goes back to Pierre Trudeau's support for that communist dictatorship. And China virus warns that Trudeau, like his Chinese role models, is already trying to take advantage of the pandemic to seize further control in Canada, limiting Parliament, restricting the media, and continuing the globalist agenda that got us into this trouble in the first place. $7.50 for an ebook. It's just over 100 pages, so it's a short book. It's not a long book. It's called Trying to Write. What do you think of that cover? Click on that cover one more time. I think that cover is gripping. What do you think of that cover? Anyways, so that book, finally, Amazon has relented after 3 or 4, including a legal threat. So I'm pleased to say that that's going ahead. It's 12:57. I'll have one more super chat. I'm sorry I didn't read it. Let me just find it here. Chris Marchese, $2. Why aren't men men anymore? Well, because men are bad and women are good, and we promote girls in school and girls in math and girl this, and men are either, we use the phrase toxic masculinity, and we say believe all women even when they're not believable, and we diminish masculine traits, and I don't even know if it's fair to say we support feminine traits, because being feminine and being feminist are quite different things, don't you think? I think we demonize maleness, and so we demoralize males. And you know, when I was in university, law schools were 50-50 men and women. Now, law schools, med schools are, if you look at the graduating class of any med school, in some schools it's almost 2/3 women. Universities themselves are becoming feminized. Guys don't need the hassle of being accused of this or that. So much of what passes as university these days is just junk, made up scholarship, not even real stuff. I think that guys have been demonized. Maleness has been demonized, almost made into an illness. So that's my answer. And people hear it and listen. The Brabinski, the Epoch Times did a great job at the China connection to Canada this past week. Companion reading to your new book. Thank you very much. I'm liking the Epoch Times more all the time. As you know, I'm a supporter of theirs morally. I'm a subscriber, and we've interviewed their people on our show. Well, it's 12:59, and I'm done modeling. I don't even want to flash my shirt anymore because it's just too 3D. But let me close with a dog video, which always makes me happier. This is curated by Justin. I have no idea what's coming, so you'll see it new, just as I will. Until tonight, you got to tune in tonight. I talk about the UBC Board of Governors chair, who was sacked because, get this, he liked some tweets from Donald Trump. He didn't say anything bad. The tweets he liked from Trump weren't even anything bad, but he liked a Trump tweet, so he was fired. That's tonight at 8 p.m. So let me say goodbye to you now and leave you with this doggy.
Come on, Zoe. We haven't done this. No, we did not.
Oh, he's going down the stairs. Oh, he fell down.